everyone, welcome to this video. This is going to be a special one because I want to talk about scams, business relationships, and the things and lessons I've learned throughout the years that hopefully will help you. Because throughout my years, I've made mistakes, I've been taken advantage of, and I've fallen for a lot of very bad scams and situations. So hopefully with this video, you're going to learn a little bit about that experience. And if you're starting your life or your professional life as a freelancer, or you're going to start sending resumes out and looking for a job, this, I think, are the things that you should be looking out for. The first one, oh, this is a classic. And this not only happens in ArtStation, but it's the I love your artwork. Now, this one is very, very interesting because you immediately feel a positive response to the message because people are resonating with your artwork. They're saying that it's really good, that they really like it, and they want to know if there's a way in which you can sell it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It should raise all of your red flags immediately because it's a scam. No one's just gonna go online and buy a single image. You're usually gonna get commissions, or someone's gonna ask if you can develop a specific image that they're looking for. People are not just gonna buy your artworks, okay? How does this work? How does this scam work? Well, they're gonna tell you that they're very interested in on the specific piece. Maybe it's an ArtStation image that you uploaded. It could be Instagram or any other social. And then when you say, hey, yes, I'm interested in selling, what's the deal? They're gonna say, oh, I deal with NFTs, or I deal with some sort of crypto coins or something like that. And the way this works is I need you to either open a specific account in this site, deposit this much amount of money, then I'm going to make you a transfer, then you're going to give me the artwork. It's a whole thing. At the end of the day, what they want you to do is to buy or purchase a specific, again, crypto coin or NFT thing. And they promise that once you do that and you send them the information, they'll send you the rest of the payment or something like that. Completely scam. Don't fall for this. My best advice is don't even answer them. No one's gonna inquire or ask you about your artwork in this particular way. It's very unprofessional. And if they really want to make business with you, they're gonna usually explain what they want to do with you, right? Like what kind of work they're expecting you to deliver or what kind of stuff they want you to provide. So this kind of stuff. And again, unfortunately, I know there's a lot of people that do believe in NFTs and crypto coins and things like that. In my experience and the experience of a lot of my close artist friends, 99% of the time, those things are related to scams. So be very careful about this. Let's go to the next one. Oh, this next one is interesting. And that's the I will pay you with experience, or this is a passion project. We're looking for talented people. We want to launch a Kickstarter. We're going to launch a beta test. They have an idea. Someone's going to approach you and they're going to say, hey, we saw your work. We want to work with you. Most of this are legit studios or legit people that really want to make something. But unfortunately, there's no resources, right? There's no investment. There's no money on the table. And those kind of stuff are literally a coin flip. And unfortunately, again, with the years of experience that I've seen and some of my students that have gone through this, not every single project will be a success. My best advice, whenever you get approached by someone that wants to work with you and there's either no money on the table or very little money, is make sure that if you do want to commit to that specific project, there's a secondary sort of advantage that you're gonna get. It could be connections, right? Imagine a new team from Riot X employees and artists are gonna start their new studio and they saw your work and they really want to work with you. Hey, well, maybe you're not gonna get paid, but if you see that you're gonna get those connections and they maybe can help you get a foot on the industry, that could work, right? Now, that could potentially be the next thing. It could potentially be the next big studio or the next big game. And it's awesome, but it's a gamble, right? And of course, with gambles, you could also lose. I've been in some projects where money was there at the beginning and then there was no money afterwards. And you need to decide whether you or not you want to stick and see the project through, or if it's time to jump ship and try something else. So whenever you are offered an opportunity to work for someone or with someone or work in a specific project where payment is not part of it, make sure you really understand that. Another very common thing is they'll tell you, hey, we're going to give you 5% or 10% of the revenue once this thing launches. Again, it's a gamble. It could be, the next freaking Stardew Valley, or it could be a flop and no one's going to make a single cent. So be very mindful about this scams. You have skills as a 3D artist that are valuable, and you need to make sure that you are going to be making a living with them, right? So if you can afford to work on passion projects or on things that are for nonprofits or things like that, that's awesome. But just be very well aware that it might not be something that's going to get you money. There might be other advantages that you might get from those projects. But be very careful about those people who are offering you positions or jobs that don't have a secure financial sort of like foundation, because those tend to be scams. Now, the next one is going to be a little bit controversial because it's like a double-sided sword, right? And these are art tests. There will be some companies that you apply to and they will ask you to do an art test. There's a whole different opinions about this, whether your portfolio should be enough for people to trust in your abilities or not, whether doing an art test is a good thing or not. I personally think that they're fine as long as they don't require you to do extreme amounts of work. And this is where the scam comes in, right? They're going to call you or they're going to accept your like resume. They're going to say, hey, we saw your work. We really want you to work with us, but we're going to need an art test just to make sure that you have all of the skills that you need. Again, quite understandable, quite common in several of the studios, even big studios like Naughty Dog. They do have art tests that you need to provide as an artist to be able to work with them, which again, I am not against. But the problem is when the art test that they're requiring is not a standardized art test, right? Like they ask you to do an asset for a project that they're working on, and then after you finish, they say, no, you know what? It's not what we wanted. But you already gave them the base mesh, you already gave them the textures, you already gave them like some of the information that they are going to be using. Another artist is going to pick up from where you left off, and they just got work for free. I've unfortunately fell to this scam a couple of times. Well, not a couple, one time a couple of years ago, where they made me work on a character. It was like a Native American character, and I did everything, base mesh, texture maps, everything as part of Natis. They got me. It was probably like 2 or 3 weeks that I was working on that on and off just to prove myself, right? Because again, I was very young. That was part of the scam that I mentioned previously, where they were promising some revenue share from the game that they were working on, and it was like, okay, no, yeah, I was very excited, and it felt like the great opportunity, right? So I fell for it. I was working with them, and unfortunately, at the end, they decided not to move along. And I actually saw a couple of things that I like, red flags that I was not liking, which I'm going to talk in the next one, or the next red flag is going to be that one. And I decided to tell them, hey, you know what? Like, this is it. I'm not going to do anything anymore. And they were, of course, not happy because they got rid of their like golden goose, right? So yeah, that's another one that you got to be very, very well aware. If you're going to be doing an art test, make sure that it's an artist that's going to test your capabilities, and not an artist that you're doing work for free. Because at the end of the day, if you're submitting all of that stuff, well, it's going to be complicated to get anything, any sort of like revenue or profit back from that work that you just did for them. So careful with artists. Just make sure that it's clear on whatever it is they're offering. Talking about that experience that I had, this is the next one that's very, very important, and that's communication. If you see, this is like big red flag, if you see that communication it's not clear, especially if you're going to be working as a freelance or remote, that's an immediate giveaway that things are not going to work out. What do I mean by this? If you send a message and you're asking for clarification, if you have a question about the process or you want a little bit of help on something that you're struggling with, and there's absolutely no answer, they take forever to answer, or they expect everything to be solved by your end, that's complicated, because then you submit the final stuff, and if it's not up to the standards that they have, it's very difficult to find the middle ground, right? This is a very common thing. I've had several clients where you start working with them and they ask you something, you do that something to the best of your abilities, and then when you show them the progress, it's not what they were expecting, and they then continue to explain more of what they were expecting, and the project becomes so big. It just balloons up until it's pretty much a complete waste of time and money. I'm gonna give you an example. Imagine someone tells you that they want you to do a character, right? And they show you something simple, something interesting like this guy right here. I think this is AI. I apologize, but it's the first one that I saw. So if you get this, the first question that you might ask is, cool, is this character supposed to be game ready? And they're like, yeah, we want to be game ready. Awesome. And then you ask about the poly count and you don't get an answer. So you start working and eventually you get to the point of retopology and you haven't gotten an answer about like the poly count. You don't know if it's supposed to be very low poly like in League of Legends, or if it's supposed to be mid poly or high poly depending on what kind of game it is. So once you get the answer, or let's say you start doing your retopology, you do all of the low poly to a very sort of like optimized way, and they're like, no, we actually want to go really high with the polygons, and we actually want a different type of like animation topology for the face, or a very common one like, oh, you know what, like in some of the revisions we've now seen that he needs to be modular, we want to switch everything. Well, you don't sculpt the character modularly from the beginning if you don't get that instruction. You might use other modeling or sculpting techniques, and it becomes complicated. You need to backtrack, you need to fix a couple of things, and it will take time, and as you guys know, time is money. So if the communication, or if the idea of whoever this is hiring you is not clear enough, that to me is always a very, very big red flag. What do I do to try to minimize that? I literally write down every single thing that I'm going to be delivering. It's going to be this kind of character with this range of quality count, with this amount of textures, with the assets worked in this specific way. We're going to be doing it for this specific engine, like all of that information. And if they ask for a change, now you have everything written down in a document. It could be an email or it could be a contract. Ideally, it should be a contract, but I'm going to talk about contracts in just a second. And you need to make sure that you like hold them accountable to what they sign up for, because if it's not there, you always want to be flexible. Of course, you always want to be diplomatic and try to find the best solution for the problem that's at hand, but you need to explain to them, I can do that, I can do those changes, I can modify the initial idea that you have, but this is not the initial idea, therefore it's not the initial price or the initial quote, therefore I'm going to need to charge you a little bit more. And that's where clients, it's like a freaking like a tug of war where you're trying to find that balance, but it usually stems from a lack of communication from the very beginning part of the process. So if you're going to be working freelance, if you're going to be doing any sort of like, again, remote work, and this works, and even in the studio, just make sure to ask questions. I personally, when I'm working with my artists, I personally prefer them to ask as many questions as they need. I know they can be some very stupid questions or very simple questions, but I rather have those questions in the first day that we're starting a project rather than get all the way to the third week, 4 weeks, second month, third month, and have issues for things that were not clarified. So make sure to ask questions and make sure to have a very clear communication. Avoid any single client or person that has no communication skills or it's difficult to work because they're not clear on what they want. Those are persons or projects that you don't want to be a part of. The next one is the contract. If you're going to be a professional artist, you need to have professional workflows. And one of the professional workflows is to have a contract. You can find any lawyer or any sort of like a person on your own country, I'm not sure what the title is for that person, that can help you develop a sort of like generic contract of what things you're going to be offering. And then you just edit specifics on that contract, sort of like template, so that you can use it. I do believe that there are some templates online. I'm not going to just go and recommend any because I don't want to get any one of you into any sort of issue. This is something that has to do more with legal departments, but it's very important that there's at least some sort of like a written agreement so that you guys know what you're doing for that. So for me, a complete scam or red flag whenever I get a solicitation by a client is that lack of professionalism, right? If I send a specific quote or a specific document and they get scared, like, no, I just want to, have it like a friendly way. I'll just send you the money. It's like, nah. That's usually a formula for failure or for very, very annoying situations. So I strongly recommend that if you're going to be working with someone, again, someone's contacting you, do a little document, just like a little contract. Sometimes it's more than enough to just be clear. Talking about the previous point, right? Clear communication will avoid you falling for all of these scams. So make sure have a contract. If there's no contract involved and they get like antsy about the fact that you want to have a contract or some sort of written agreement, that's a massive red flag, massive red flag. And it's probably going to be complicated to work with those individuals. The next very important thing that you need to take into consideration are the delivery of the assets, right? So when you're working with specific projects, sometimes it will be required for you to deliver the final assets. Let me show you. So if someone tells me, hey, I need you to deliver to me the Bell asset that we've been working on, right? This one right here. And they're going to be using it for a game and they hire me. Let's say just like a quick day, just want me to help them with this particular asset and they're going to pay for the asset. It's not the same thing to send them this file right here, the substance file with all of my layers and all of my information, then just send them the asset with the exported textures. It's not the same thing to send them the low poly, the high poly, the ZBrush files, than just to send them the final model. If you go to the marketplace in Unreal or Unity, you're going to see that what they're selling to you, it's just the asset, the low poly, and the textures. That's it. No one really offers you or sends you all of the other information. So that's a huge scam and a huge red flag. If they're asking you to send all of the raw files, like all of the things that you needed to create the asset, and that was not part of the initial sort of like discussion, that's a problem. Why is this a problem? Because it comes to the final point that I'm going to talk about, which is money, right? A lot of the times, and unfortunately, I had a horrible experience several years ago that not only involved me, but all of a group of my artists that we were working on a specific project, and we delivered all the finals before we were paid. That is one of the critical mistakes that we make as artists, because we feel pressured by a lot of the clients and a lot of the projects that we need to deliver the final so that they approve it, and now they're going to pay us. Unfortunately, they never did. And the sad thing is that a lot of the things that we did back then were still used on their final sort of like production, right? Like they're still being used today. And for us as a small artist, it's pretty much impossible or very difficult to go fight a legal battle against people that do that to you. But that particular like project that I'm talking about, I made all the mistakes. That was one of the projects that I learned the most. Communication was awful. They didn't have any written contract. Everything was just like verbally. They asked for all of the deliverables before we were finished so that they could see how things were looking, right? And it was just a mess. I was very new. This was back in like 2017. I was very new in this sort of like business, so I definitely got taken advantage of. Later on, I learned that the person that took advantage of me actually took a huge chunk of money, so it's a mess. I'll tell that story another time. But the point is that if you see that they're asking for the final files, like all of the things so that they can edit stuff, and they don't have an artist that's like on-house or in-house doing that kind of stuff, it doesn't make sense. What they're going to do is they're just going to take your files and then they're going to hire someone else or send them to someone else to finish or do more variations or modifications. And since they have all of the core files, right, all of the things that make up the element, it's going to be very easy for them to do more work out of your initial work without paying you. So again, unfortunate situation. If they ask for raw files, make sure that's specified on your contract or documents or agreement, and make sure that they pay for it. It's not the same price to just send the final files than to send the final files plus all of the files that you use to get to that point. And finally, money talks first, guys. It's very difficult what I'm about to say, because I know that as artists, we don't like this part of the process of having to go and negotiate, because a lot of people do want to take advantage of you. But money is king in this whole thing, right? Like not only are we doing art because we love to do art, but we also want to make a living out of it. And you cannot make a living if you're not getting the money. So one golden rule, and again, another very famous scam is send me the stuff, I'll pay you. You send the stuff and they don't pay. Very, very unfortunate situation. And once you send the files, once you send the models, the textures, it's gone. Like they can just ghost you, they can never talk back to you again, and there's absolutely no easy way to get the money back. And again, for simple or small jobs, for freelance stuff, for small like 1, 2, 3 week projects, what are you gonna do? Hire an attorney, spend a lot of money trying to fight that specific element? I mean, it's doable, but it's not something that we're comfortable with. So my rule of thumb is I always charge something at the beginning. Usually it can be 20%, 30%, sometimes all the way up to 50% of the final cost. I like to charge another small section midway through the project, and then before final delivery, you pay the rest. So I'll show you watermarked versions of the video, sort of the assets, so that you can see how things are looking. I can show you all of the things that you want. We can go into a Zoom meeting, or I can show you, again, we can go directly to the place we're working. And in the case of the stuff that we do, for instance, VR and the AR stuff, we can show you the whole process. You like it? Cool. Pay, or at least show me that the purchase order is going through and it's starting the process of being paid, and at that point I can handle in the deliverables. Because otherwise it's just, again, you're trusting other people, and it's not about trust. You don't want to be like that guy that's just untrustworthy and you don't trust anyone, right? Like that's not what we want to do. We just want to be safe. Those are like safe checkpoints that you can do for your own work to make sure that when you deliver stuff, everything is clear. And this goes back to one of my previous points. If you see that the communication and they start getting angsty or angry at this kind of, I don't want to say demands, but requirements from you, that you want things to be held in a specific way, then it's a very, very huge red flag. I've had a situation where the client really needs the stuff like this, like, hey, we need to have this done by tomorrow because we're going to be showcasing to another very important client. It's like, sure, I have it ready, but you guys need to pay. And believe me, once you really hold on to your like gut and be like, I'm not gonna send you the files until you pay me or you send me the purchase order that it has been approved and everything, at that point, you send this stuff, and you won't believe how fast people move when they really see that they have to follow through with their deal. Because it's sometimes I like to say that it's not always that people don't want to pay you or they don't want to help you. It's more the fact that they sometimes forget or they don't think that our work is as valuable. And it's a very unfortunate situation, but that's where you really got to stand your ground and be like, what I do is important. This is my job. Yes, I love doing my job. I really, really enjoy doing 3D, but I need to make a living out of this. And if you don't pay me, that's going to be impossible. So that's pretty much it, guys. I know this is a little bit of a different video, but I sometimes feel like I need to share this kind of stuff because I was there at one point, as I was mentioning, several years ago. I was a new artist trying to make a living and understand how the world worked, and I got taken advantage of quite a bit. So hopefully with these tips, again, don't fall for easy scams like NFTs and cryptocurrencies going from ArtStation. Make sure there's clear communication. Make sure you have a contract. I originally wanted this video to be a 5 scams to avoid or something like that, but now it ended up being like work advice or freelance advice that you might find useful. These are the things that I've done in my career. I'm still learning. We're always learning, always improving, right? So if there's a specific topics that you guys think that I missed or specific things that you've experienced in your own life, let us know here in the comments. We can all benefit from understanding what kind of like big red flags are there, what kind of scams out there, so that we don't fall for any of those elements out there on the world, right? Now, if you're not following this channel and you like this kind of content, of course, not only this theory about freelancing and how to deal with clients, but also the 3D stuff that we do, make sure to give us a follow, a share, subscribe. It always helps. And yeah, with nothing else to add, I'll be seeing you back very, very soon with more 3D. See you on the next one, my friends. Bye-bye.